All right. Well, this was a really fun, all of these have been fun, but this was another real journey of discovery. I learned a whole bunch of really interesting facts and features of this garden that I never knew about, and some things about the plants that I never knew about. So let me share the screen here. Okay. All right, the California native plant garden. I think this is unlike those Mediterranean gardens, but like the pollinator garden, this is one that people are really familiar with. There's a lot of plants in this wonderful garden that we recognize because it is California natives. And you can see them not just at Gamble, but you can see them when you go out walking on the coast or go out walking in the woods. So there's some real old friends that will come across. And I'll bet that at least one of you is going to be surprised by one of the types of flower that we'll get to near the end here and not realize that it was in the garden. Like all these gardens, you know, it depends on what time of the year you catch it as to what you're going to see. And so I focus primarily on the plants that are in flower right now, because they're sort of more interesting. One of these days, if somebody has a lot of guts, maybe we'll do the grasses or something like that, the plants that don't flower very well. But I'm going to focus primarily on the ones that were in bloom over the past 2 or 3 weeks. So here is one that I hope everybody recognizes. What you may not know, so this is Mimulus, the sticky monkey flower, which you certainly see wild just about everywhere. Out at the Baylands, it's been planted, reestablished out at the Baylands. You can see it, I see it on my hikes in the mountains all the time. I always thought that it was called Mimulus, was the genus. But when I went to look this up to confirm, it says that no, it's been renamed Diplacus, still Aurantiacus, which just means orange. It's a wonderful plant because it comes in all these great colors. The cultivars come in everything from almost a pure white through yellow, orange, and a deep, deep, deep red, which is one that we have in there. It's a very, very hardy plant. It is pollinated by bees and hummingbirds. I've certainly frequently seen hummingbirds at the monkey flower in the Gamble Garden. It's a very hardy plant, and it's also the host plant for two endangered butterflies. Other interesting things about it is if you recall the plant, it's very sticky, which is hence the name sticky monkey flower. It's got a resin, a phenolic resin that helps the plant retain water. And a friend of mine who's a botanist and not given to exaggerate once told me that they called it monkey flower because somebody looked in this flower and saw a monkey's face. Frankly, I can't see it. Any questions or comments about this Diplacus?
Well, I will add first my agreement that I never understood why it looked like a monkey's face either, though that is what I've heard also. But I also have read that this plant is extremely good in drought times. The leaves will dry up except for the very end tip of the leaves. And the end tip will stay green and continue doing a little bit of photosynthesis. So if you ever happen to see this out in the wild in some of the drier seasons, look to see if you can find that phenomenon happening.
I've actually seen that many times where the bottom of the plant is just completely desiccated and brown and just a few green leaves at the tips. It's one of those plants that basically, you know, it takes advantage of the fact that it can go dormant in the late summer when there's no rain. And then once the rain starts, it grows really quickly and flowers pretty quickly. I've always found it to be a real favorite just because it is so hardy and you can find it everywhere. Okay, so the next one, this one is actually close to the monkey flower. It was near the driveway. Um, I'm also very fond of Penstemon. I think they're really pretty plants. I did not realize that we have this plant, which is called Blue Springs or bunch leaf Penstemon, foothill Penstemon, and it is endemic to California. Mary, tell us what endemic means.
Well, let's see if somebody else remembers.
Only in California.
Yes, that's right. It's only found, it can be found in all of the major coastal mountain ranges and in the northern Sierra Nevada foothills. Mostly a chaparral plant. It is cultivated now as an ornamental. So it probably, when they say it's endemic, it means the native plant is endemic to California, but I'm sure you can find plants like this particular species, all over the place because it's a very popular nursery plant. Again, it is quite drought tolerant and has a really pretty blue flower. Nectar source for birds and butterflies, just like most of the things that we're going to be visiting here. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
I think Penstemon is very good for drought. I mean, you see Penstemon in Arizona. You see a lot of Penstemon in Oregon, in the high desert. You know, I think there are a lot of great varieties that are good in drought.
And there's such
for low water.
The colors range from, again, red, a nice red to a dark, dark blue. So it's a nice showy plant also. All right, so our next plant is Heterothica. We have a couple of these in the garden. This is another native to California and Baja. Grows in the mountains and the foothills. It's a perennial herb, but it's very variable in size and form. Some of them, this particular one, which is Cecilia florea, is a kind of low-growing mat. It's hard to tell in my picture here, but I think this is about 6 or 8 inches tall. There's another type that I believe we also have in the garden that grows tall stems that are almost a foot tall. And it's a slightly different species, but I couldn't get, I thought one picture of this was enough. It's very pretty when it's in full bloom. Then it forms these interesting little puff balls. And I don't know, it's kind of, it's interesting. I wouldn't call it beautiful, but it's an interesting plant. Can we tell what family of plants this is going to belong to?
I'm not going to answer because I always do. Someone else. But also, while we're thinking about that, put on your observation eyes and look at that close up. And Doug, thank you for giving us the 2 versions. I really like this format with the bigger map and the closer up. Who would like to tell us what you're observing here? Sonia, can you tell us what you're observing?
I'm amazed by these puff balls of seeds, I guess. They look so beautiful.
Your sound.
Seeds? Hello?
Yeah, okay, good. Put your face up close to your mic.
Well, I was saying I like the shape of the seeds, I suppose. That they look like very spherical kind of seeds. I don't know how they fly, though. I cannot see. I wonder what each seed looks like individually. Whether it looks anything. I don't think it looks anything like a dandelion. I have to see it in close up to understand. I'm very curious. How does it look?
So what we're seeing here is actually, we're seeing the buds in just about all stages. I'm not sure I see an unopened bud here, but here's the full flower. The flower after it's been pollinated, desiccate, and then these are the seed heads, as you mentioned. It is in the composite or Aster family or sunflower family, and we can tell that again because it's got this composite kind of flower. But remember that these kind of seed heads are characteristic. Hey, Jonathan, can you mute your phone there, Jonathan?
Sure. I'm actually
Oh, are you going over there?
I'm actually in the native garden now, so there's a lot of background.
Okay, so,
But I was going to give you some video, but I'll let you go.
yeah, well,
You can stay on. You can stay on, but we're getting a lot of background noise. So anyway, these kinds of little frilly, they're called pappus, are characteristic of the composite family, just like the dandelion and just like salsify. So it's really easy sort of to recognize. Now, one other thing let's see in my notes here, the most outstanding feature of this is nearly year-round flowering. So that's really nice to have these golden flowers all year round. And I'll keep an eye out for that next time I go over to see if that's the case. So let's see what we have up next. Oh, another old friend.
I do have a question though, before you move on, Doug, going back to the yellow. If Jonathan is out there, this looks like a plant that would be very tactile too, where you would, if you could feel it, it looks fuzzy. And what
It is.
okay,
I'm not sure what you're seeing, but maybe you're seeing my hand.
Yes.
And you see it's like the little dandelion, I don't know, parachutes that you get. So to answer Sonia's question, that's kind of how they fly. I guess they just get light enough and then they loosen with the wind, and there's a bit of a breeze. But anyway, you can get the idea.
Are the stems and leaves fuzzy and or?
Yes, the leaves are fuzzy, and it appears that the stems are as well. And
if you smash it a little bit with your fingers, does it have a scent?
I'm gonna have to take off my mask. Yeah, I don't know how to transmit that to you, but it has a little bit. It's a lighter lemony scent, more like a kind of, there's another weed, like it's like a pineapple weed scent. So a light citrus.
Awesome.
But pretty green. It's not as intense as a sage or something like that.
This flower is fun. It's basically a dune flower. It grows on sand dunes or on just lightly desiccated sandstone, and it moves. And if you plant it in your garden, you won't find it where you planted it. It grows on such bad soil that it uses up the soil nutrients that are underneath it, and then within a few weeks, it's already moving on. As soon as it gets some water, it will go to a different place. It'll root and go to a different place and stop growing where it's been before. So you do have problems with this if you garden with it and getting dead spaces.
That makes total sense with the fact that we're seeing it blooming and in seed simultaneously. So it looks like it's always looking to send its seeds out to the next opportunistic spot.
And it has a lot of runners, underground runners. And the way you can maintain this in a garden is to shear it off at ground level. And then like in the fall, and then when it rains, it'll just grow right back very quickly. And that way it won't travel as much. But if you had like a sprinkler here and a patch of it here, it would end up at the sprinkler very quickly.
That's very clever of it. Okay, let's take a look at the next plant, which I think is another old friend, Monardella, which is the Coyote Mint. We also had this in the pollinator garden. This is another one that's highly fragrant. And as I say, at some point, I'm going to go back through all these notes and I'm going to put together a fragrance tour because there just are so many plants that have powerful fragrance, especially in the pollinator garden and in the California native garden. This one is again attractive to butterflies, used as Native American groups as a remedy for stomach upset, respiratory conditions, and sore throat, and can be steeped into a mint tea. And you can get a good idea of the size of the flowers by the fact that I captured a bee on here.
Yeah. Vicki, was this plant also interspersed with the roses earlier in the season? I don't know if she heard me.
No, that's Nepacha,
Oh, okay.
and which is a very different plant. This this like shade, oops, it's sort of a margin of the woodlands type of plant. Again, it sets out lots of runners, and it colonizes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And very, very attractive to bees.
Yeah.
You can almost never see the flower heads without bees swarming around them.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now here's one that I was surprised to find.
Mm-hmm.
I thought at first it was a blueberry plant, but it's I guess you pronounce it ribes, the red flower currant.
Mm-hmm.
There were no flowers. Okay, so this picture I had to steal off the web. This is what the plant looks like right now, and it's got these little currants beginning to form on it, and this is what the flowers look like. So there was no part of the plant was in flower when I took this picture, but I thought the flower was so interesting that we ought to at least try and recognize it.
It flowers before it gets its leaves in the very early spring.
Right. The Wikipedia says at the same time as the leaves emerge, but I'll believe you.
Well, maybe the leaves are teeny tiny and the flowers are showy.
Right, right. So that's another great plant which is going to be covered with flowers before the leaves begin to hide them. And I thought this was an interesting statement. It said the fruit is a dark purple oval berry, about 1/2 inch long, edible, but with an insipid taste.
That's judgmental.
Now, I went over there today, but I did not try and taste one.
Well, I'm pretty sure that this leaf is also fuzzy and soft.
Mm-hmm.
You have a chance to feel it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. Is our man on the ground still there?
Yeah, I am. It's not as fuzzy and soft as the
No.
previous, but let's see if I can give you the video. I'm not sure what you see. But yeah, it's soft. I wouldn't say it's fuzzy. I hope I'm looking up the right one.
I think
No. And I don't see any berries. Interesting or insipid. But this is the species I have. So this may not be the right.
It's the wrong plant, John.
Yeah, where did you see it in the relation to the?
I'm trying to remember. It's sort of when you come in the driveway from Waverly.
Yeah. Are there bigger leaves?
Yes, bigger.
Is this is it maybe? Do you see this? Or are you looking at me?
yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's right. And there are some berries. Some have dried and popped. Some have not yet ripened. Mm-hmm. It is fuzzy, but not as fuzzy as some sages or as the previous plant we had, or two plants ago.
Jonathan, do you see how bright green it is, even though it's in a native garden?
Yeah, it's interesting. The actual shade changes even within the leaf. So it's not with any sort of rhyme or reason. I mean, there's continuity, but it's not any particular. But yeah, definitely, it's a lighter green. I'm sure it was a lot brighter earlier on in the season. But yeah, and there's really no evidence of the blooms. But the berries are definitely ripening. as you can see.
You're gonna taste one?
I may try this one.
We want to hear.
It's been nice knowing you.
You're gonna die of boredom.
I think you're right. That's not a bad description. It really is just kind of, there's seeds inside the fruit, and it really doesn't have any sharpness to it. It is kind of boring. I don't know how you'd make it interesting. Maybe some hot sauce or something.
Lots of sugar.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some nutrients advantages to it. It's got to have something to offer. But I assume birds go for this, Doug, or who is that the intention in terms
Yeah, I'm sure.
of spreading the
birds
seeds?
and possibly mice and smaller mammals, squirrels and stuff like that.
Yeah. And here's some dried out ones that never left the stem. You can see them clearly. I'm not sure you can, but anyway, yeah, they do dry up also, and they're not.
If you want to see what John is doing close up, there's the option to pin his video.
Oh, okay.
Then you can pin it to go back to the.
All right, how about if we move on?
Yeah, okay.
Another real favorite here, favorite of mine for sure, the California fuchsia, or epilobium. I didn't get a picture of the large plant. You can see it in the background here because there are only a few flowers on it, and the plant itself it's nice. It's a nice green plant, but it was not covered with flowers at this time of the year. I've seen this one also out on hikes, especially on dry trails. I believe you could probably find it at the Foothills Park. The scarlet flowers, of course, are what makes it really attractive to people. And it's actually called the hummingbird flower or hummingbird trumpet. And you can guess what the primary pollinator is. Now, this is going to start a series. This is something that on my voyage of discovery really surprised me, because now we're going to look, this is a plant that's in the Gracie family, the evening primrose family. And we're going to look at a couple of other plants in the same family and just be surprised at how different they all are. This is Ornithera villosa, the hairy evening primrose. A big plant. Probably these are 3 to 4 feet tall with beautiful yellow primrose flowers on the top. But can you believe that this plant and this plant are in the same family? This is why botany is so hard and taxonomy is such a mystery. An interesting thing here is the name, Ornithera. I'm not going to put Tanya on the spot again, but Eno is from the Greek wine, and thera, to drink or to imbibe. It was thought that a European plant that was very similar to this was thought to induce a taste for wine.
Didn't taste like wine. It induced the taste.
Right. It caused you to become a souse. So that's a nice little bit of information that you can use during your tours. All right, so I have another plant in the same family, the Gracie. Clarkia. And isn't that interesting? So look at the stamens here are sort of similar. I mean, whoops. It's hard to see them in the yellow flower, but again, a lot of variety in this family of plants. These are really pretty plants. I've seen these all over the place at Edgewood Park. Probably right about now, or maybe a month ago. They actually have a trail called Clarkia, the Clarkia Trail. This is Rubicunda, the ruby chalice Clarkia, another plant endemic to California. And this and the next one I'm going to show you, which is very closely related to it, are both called Farewell to Spring, is another common name. And that is because they bloom in June and July, right at the end of spring, the beginning of summer. A very prolific bloomer. It's just absolutely gorgeous out in the wild, because you'll see a whole hillside covered with these plants. And let me see, I think I read that they self-seed very reliably, but the plants themselves are actually annuals. You know, I can't find that in my notes here, but I'll have to.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. They are annuals, and I have them throughout my garden. They and the elegant Clarkia, which we also have, are wonderful to sprinkle under rose bushes if you have space, because they're just lovely, and then they go away.
Great, great. Yeah. So here's its brother, Clarkia amina, Farewell to Spring. And I probably should have put both of these on a single slide. You can see the difference. Sort of this pink area is much larger in the rubicunda, and the red area is small. And in the amina, the red area has really increased very large size, and the pink is just on the margins. Very pretty little plants. Notice the little seed pods down here. Those, I'm going to bet, are filled with hundreds of little tiny black seeds. And they probably pop open just like snapdragons.
So, Doug, on these, I'm noticing that both of the Clarkias have, it looks like 4 petals. Is that right?
Yes.
And how about the yellow one before? Was that a 4 petal?
It's fine.
Kind of looks like it.
Boy, it's hard to tell from these photos. I look something like 1, 2, big one, 3, and 4.
I count 3, but maybe, yeah, they're very light. No, there's 4. Oh, there are 4.
So that does maybe account for why they're in the same, you could say family, or I never get family in the same.
Yeah, I'm sure that it may be one of the criteria. And then look at what happened to this Clarkia.
Oh.
This is the elegant Clarkia, which we also have in the pollinator garden. And it just has, I mean, the flowers have just gone crazy, right, in this one. Also endemic to California. Oh, yeah, this is interesting. The flowers of the whole genus Clarkia are primarily pollinated by specialist bees. So again, we have this one bee to one pollinator to one plant relationship, which we've seen in a couple of other plants. The elegant Clarkia, to my mind, is not as elegant as the other two. It kind of grows, the flowers are at the end of very, very long stems. And the plant itself, while the flower is very showy, the plant itself is, at least this time of the year, is kind of blah.
Do we know, does Gamble Garden reseed the native garden, or do they let these plants seed themselves, self-seed? Does anyone know?
I know we are removing some excess plants, but and there are some that die and then are replaced. But the sort of bigger spreading plants, I can't ever remember us having to plant those each year. They tend to renew themselves, but I can find out. I mean, Ella can tell you.
We start them, when we first introduce them in that garden, we start them from seed. We don't get seedlings. And we pull if they show up in the wrong place. But they're pretty reliable, the Clarkia at least, in self-seeding where they were. They also travel,
Yeah.
but not by the roots. But they're very reliable. Clarkias are.
So then that that would imply that that the bee is pollinating it.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's-
yes.
that's a-
In fact, I was there yesterday. There was somebody who wanted to know about the flowers, and I showed them how when they are dry, those little pods are star-like. They're and they like this, and they open up like this, and the first seeds come out, the top seeds come out sometimes 2 or 3 weeks before the bottom seeds come out. And that is to prolong the season of broadcasting.
Smart.
Yeah, they have quite a number of strategies. The elegant Clarkia is great to plant with poppies or lupin or other plants. By itself, it's pretty naked. It makes like a multi-branch candelabra blooming from the bottom to the top. But the bush itself has so little foliage that it is pretty straggly. But the color is phenomenal. And elegant Clarkia can be anywhere from almost white to this dark color to purple.
Vicky, do you happen to know, would this make a good cut flower, or would it just shrivel up if you cut it?
I have cut it. It's good. It lasts about 2 days because the flowers themselves are not long lasting, even in the wild. But if you're doing a quick and dirty bouquet, it's great for accent.
Okay, thank you for that. That's really great information. Here's another one of my personal favorites, just because you can see it everywhere, especially at the coast, which is Ariagonam, buckwheat. Known as wild buckwheat, a highly species-rich genus. The name is derived from the Greek word again, arion meaning wool, and gonu meaning knee or joint. And the guy who named it explained the name as describing the first named species as a woolly plant with sharply bent stems. So there he got the wool and the joint. And now this answered a question in my research that I've always wondered: is this the same as the buckwheat that they grow in Brittany and make all those delicious crepes out of? And the answer is no. It's a completely different plant. The wild buckwheat in Europe is not the same as this. Let's see. Interesting is that there was a species of this called truncatum, called the Mount Diablo buckwheat, which was believed to be extinct, but they found a patch of it in 2005. I guess in Mount Diablo. I didn't follow up on the on the link. And again, lots of butterflies and moths love this plant. They use it as food. And some caterpillars only feed on this plant. So again, the word for that, by the way, is monophagous. Monophagous meaning one eater. It's a really pretty plant, again, visited by just tons and tons of bees when the flower buds are up there. Once the buds ripen, they turn sort of this reddish brown color. And the plant, especially out in the wild, will begin to turn brown and senesce. It'll begin to go dormant. So I don't know what happens in the garden here if it's getting some water.
Does it have a special butterfly or something? The caterpillar has to come from somewhere.
So it depends on the genus, and it depends on the species. Some of them, there's just a single kind of caterpillar which will feed on this plant. I don't know whether the butterfly of that caterpillar is the one that pollinates the plant or not.
Got it.
All right.
What a fun little tuft for a bee to land on.
Yeah, isn't it cute? The California Aster, obviously from the name, we know that it's going to be a composite flower. We can see the typical composite with all these little florets, the florets on the outside and all the miniature little flowers on the inside. Known as the Pacific Aster or California Aster. And I love this little note. It said that despite its Latin name, which is Chiliensis, you can't find it in Chile. And again, it also produces a typical seed head with the little wings like dandelions and the other ones. Very typical of the Asteraceae or the composite plants to produce a seed that's wind dispersed like that. Any other comments about this?
It also roots very aggressively. And its primary method actually of reproducing itself is through rooting. Mm-hmm. Rather than through the seeds give it, take it to another location. It forms a very dense clump of green, and then the flowers will last up to 2.5 months. So it's a very nice sort of foundational plant. And then it dies back, you cut it to the ground.
I wonder if these plants are so aggressive in the garden because they've had to adapt to, California summers and California winters. Mm-hmm. And so if they're the least bit pampered, they're going to take over.
Yeah.
But it's great to have the horticultural insights on these. So here's a really interesting plant. Ugly, ugly, ugly is the plant, but it has a very interesting flower and a very, very interesting story. This is white sage, found all over the southwestern US and northwestern Mexico, but primarily on the coastal sage scrub habitat of Southern California. It's pollinated by bumblebees, carpenter bees, hummingbirds, and stuff like that. However, most of these species are ineffective pollinators. There are only 3 species of carpenter bee and 1 species of bumblebee that can actually pollinate the plant. So it gets visited by a whole variety, a whole host of would-be pollinators. But the successful pollination takes place only with a handful of animals, a handful of insects. Very important story used by the Native American peoples on the Pacific coast. The seed was used in a food called pinole or pinole, where they harvest the seed, they would mix it with wheat and flour and sugar and make biscuits and gruel. And the leaves and stems are also a traditional food. But more importantly, before I get to that, they also, I read that they use the seed for removing foreign objects from the eye. The seed has a little bit of stickiness to it. And there is this tradition, there are other seeds that have been used this way. You place the seed in the eye of someone with a foreign object in it, and the seed sticks to the foreign object. But the seed is larger, so it's easier to get out. I am not going to try this.
Ouch!
Yeah. Also, the leaves are bundled up. The leaves of this plant are bundled up and turned into what do they call it? It's a sage. They burn the sage. I'm blanking on a cleaning kit for cleaning your soul or cleaning the space. So they will smudge, that's the word. They make a smudge stick from white sage. And people have been going out and harvesting this and greatly diminishing the availability of white sage in the wild because Urban Outfitters, Walmart, and Amazon are now offering cleaning space kits, commercial smudge kits made from white sage. So if you need to clean your space, you can just go to Amazon and order this online. Vicky, you may want to tell us something about the plant. I didn't even take a picture of the whole plant, which stood about 4 or 5 feet tall. I didn't find it very interesting at this time of the year.
Just the medicinal purposes and the folk spiritual cleaning. It's not like cleaning with smudgy smoke. It's spiritually cleaning through inhaling it and some astringent. See, but it's been used by several Native American cultures in different forms of sage. So like the sage that the Navajo use is not this species, but it's a common practice to use sage that way. We, of course, use it for Thanksgiving turkey.
I've used it to make tea. It's very, very potent. And I do maybe mystically believe it also cleanses my body, but I have no idea. But I did buy it at the farmer's market in downtown Palo Alto, where it's available regularly dried.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was actually a story about some people being arrested a year or two ago with 400 pounds of white sage. It's not actually a endangered plant. It's not listed in the endangered species list, but they did say, the notes say that the conservationists are very concerned because it has become such a popular thing. And thank you, Vicky. I absolutely meant that it was meant for a soul cleansing. This is not what you use to, clean your pots and pans.
Some people will try anything.
Yeah, right. Okay, here's a nice showy plant. Again, I only took pictures of the flowers. Unmistakable, Romnea. Unmistakable in the garden when it's in bloom. These are the largest, let me see what largest flowers of any native species in California. They're about, 4 or 5 inches from tip to tip. Absolutely beautiful. I always call it the fried egg plant because it looks to me like a sunny side up egg. Mm-hmm. This is interesting. So it is a poppy. It is in the poppy family. And it was nominated for the honor of California state flower because it is native to California in 1890, but it lost in a landslide to the California poppy, to our beautiful little orange poppy. Let's see. The shrub, the plant itself is pretty tall. It's about 3, 4, maybe getting up to 5 feet tall. Mm-hmm. Any other horticultural information on this?
Well, I was buying one once, and the guy behind the desk, this is up in Sacramento, I was putting it in my sister's garden. He goes, that guy will find water 12 feet away. So don't plant it close to any water source. And it's true. They can put their runners out for about 10 to 12 feet. Wow. That's their scope. And I have seen these blooming in the wild on Tejon Pass at 8,000 feet in August. So it has quite a wide range. And I've often wondered what pollinates it because, but I don't think it could be a specialist. I've seen bumblebees on them all the time.
And here's the seed pod, which really looks very much like a poppy seed pod. I imagine these get a lot bigger too, but poppies always have the poppies always have this really interesting little structure at the top here, which is preserved even after fertilization.
Now on this plant, I think I've noticed it planted in the industrial areas around Google and stuff, and I think I've noticed that it dies down to nothing after it finishes. Is that right? So Vicky, I think, so you have this beautiful, showy, tall.
It doesn't completely die back. About a third of it to a half of it will die back. and some of it will die back completely. But if you keep letting it go, it'll get to be a really rangy, thick 12 feet, and it has heavy thorns on it when it gets older. So most people just cut it to the ground. And then it comes back from its roots to about 4 feet, 3 to 4 feet. And it will reach towards sunlight. So if you have it like, I have it under my toyons, but it will reach around the corner, just as its roots will reach over to the water faucet. It will reach around a corner and pop up. It will put a long stem through a toyon and pop up white between, you know, it's remarkably persistent flower.
That's great. All right, well, here's a question.
I think it was this plant I was trying once to.
Sonia, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you
Yes,
hear
yes.
me better now? Okay. I think this plant, correct me if I'm wrong, the seed pod is kind of hard and it has small, it's very nasty to open it up. The little things they kind of stick in your finger, it hurts. You cannot open it up with bare hands, the seed pod.
Mm-hmm.
Is that when it's hard, when it's dry and brown?
Mm-hmm.
Vicky, yeah?
Again, its seed is not its primary method of it's a runner rather than a seed. And the seeds have a very heavy resin around them, like a sap. And when that hardens, it hardens like almost like epoxy. You're right. I love them. I really do. And they're just wonderful at night. At twilight, they pick up color beautifully. I would always plant them downhill from a house if you have a slope, so that you would look down at them as they come up through whatever is around them. As they're not very good looking, the stems aren't very good looking, but as they reach between foliage or as they come up towards the light, they catch twilight on them. They close sort of at night. So in the morning, they have to open up to the sun. But at twilight, they're absolutely gorgeous.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
I just want to do a quick time check here because we're coming up on 5 o'clock. I've got about 6 or 7 more slides here. I'm happy to push on unless people have had enough.
I won't say anything more.
Well, how about,
No, Vicky.
if anybody needs to leave, feel free to drop off, but I will definitely like to see the rest of the slides. So just make your own decision.
Okay, and we are recording this so that if you need to get off, you will be able to pick up the thread later on. So here's a plant that was completely new to me. And I don't think I even ever saw it in the garden before until I was going from plant to plant. The bush anemone, Carpentaria. The sole species in this genus, it's in the hydrangea family, which is interesting. It is endemic to only 7 sites in Fresno and Madera, where it grows in the chaparral. It loves wildfire, apparently, and can reproduce from the burned stumps after burning. It also said that it primarily reproduces via suckers and not via the seeds. The seeds are not particularly viable. And the horticultural notes said it's good if you want it to spread because it's producing these suckers, but otherwise you really have to keep after it because it's another one of these things which in a friendly garden, when it's not out in the wild, becomes invasive.
And thank you to John.
Wait, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, I am, but there's a sucker right there.
Right.
Yeah. Compared, yeah. So you can definitely see it in action.
Okay. Another favorite one that you should recognize, We have this all over the garden. I've probably seen it in 4 or 5 different places. The Salvia Clevelandia. Hummingbirds love it. Swallowtail butterflies. I think probably everybody recognizes it. It is has a wonderful scent, and it must grow very easily because it just is everywhere.
Doug, do you know, is this the one Richard used to talk about, one particular plant being to him the smell of California, the one that evoked California? And I was wondering, I thought it might be this one.
You know, I remember him saying that, but I don't remember which plant it was.
Right.
Okay.
Why is it got Cleveland in his name?
Oh, that's just some guy's name.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure. And in fact,
Not
it's,
the place.
sorry?
Oh, not the place.
Well, I'll tell you, if you look at the labels, I've seen this, even at Gamble Garden, I've seen this labeled 3 different ways. I didn't put the cultivar names on here because I thought it was kind of confusing, but I think that this label actually says Salvia by Clevelandii. But I've also seen it just as Clevelandii. So again, we should have a long session on taxonomy, plant taxonomy, you know, a couple of days worth.
Do you know if this you can grow this from seed?
I don't know, Vicky or John.
I don't know.
Okay, I looked it up. It is named in honor of Daniel Cleveland, a 19th century lawyer, amateur botanist, plant collector, and co-founder of the San Diego Society of Natural History.
There you go.
That's why it's named Clevelandia.
Thanks, Mary.
We needed that.
All right, Verbena.
Yeah.
This is a really nice flower. It says deliciously fragrant, rich lavender blossoms, highly attractive to butterflies. So I missed pinching this and smelling it. Verbenas typically are highly scented. This also says it can bloom almost year round. What else? Oh, introduced by the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden from the Cedros Island off of Baja. So I think it has a very narrow range in the wild. Obviously, and this Dillamina is the popular cultivar that the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden has been pushing. All right. Let's see, Dichelostemma, probably, the firecracker flower. Again, interesting. This is in the hyacinth family. It's called the wild hyacinth. I think we can guess what the typical pollinator is. These are long tubes, about, I don't know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches long, maybe even longer. Indigenous to North Carolina and Oregon. No, they must have meant North California and Oregon. It's a real feast for hummingbirds. Oh, and yes, the surprising thing about this, it's in the cluster lily subfamilies, which means it's in the asparagus family. So the asparagus family is very, very large. And this doesn't look anything like an asparagus, but it is in that same family.
And those long pointed leaves behind it are an aster. They are not the firecracker flower.
Things here,
yeah.
Right. Right.
And it's going to have a head with a whole bunch of little white flowers on it, little teeny tiny white flowers.
Oh, cool. Another plant that I never knew was there, This is also a lily, Tritelia laxa, the triplet lily. And it's also known, I thought this was kind of interesting, it's also known as Ithuriel's spear. Ithuriel was a angel who was dispatched by Gabriel to locate Satan in the Garden of Eden. And Satan had turned himself into a toad close to the ear of Eve. By touching Satan with his spear, Ithuriel causes Satan to resume his proper likeness. Interesting story. This is apparently in Paradise Lost. And perhaps these, are these the seed pods? Or yes, these must be the seed pods. Reminded somebody of a spear. The plant grows from a corm. It is in the lily family, so it's got like a bulb, a corm, which is edible, and it said apparently it's similar in taste and use as the potato. Have you ever seen the corm of this, Vicky?
But they're not like a potato.
Well, it says
this is like a swollen tube, like a swelling off a tuber. I mean, a tuber, you know, like there's a root and then there's a swelling.
Right.
They're not very big. They are, again, they like the margin on like a hillside. They like the water coming down underneath, but they will pop way up off a hillside if they get enough water and they reach out to the sun. And they're absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
They're one of my favorites.
It's a low plant though, right?
Oh yeah, 18 inches at the very most.
Yeah.
But they pop up out of the grasses or whatever's around them. And they will twist around like any hyacinth will, twist wild hyacinth to find light. And you find them in colonies.
All right. Another really pretty little plant, which I don't know, I guess I just never seen it before, but this is blue flax or prairie flax, a perennial plant. Western North America from Alaska all the way down to Baja, and the Pacific coast east to the Mississippi River. So it grows everywhere west of the Mississippi River in the United States. The seeds are edible if they're cooked, and I'm told they have a pleasant nutty taste and are very nutritious, and there's also a high oil content. It's a pretty little plant, but it tends to flop. I think it needs a little, if you were trying to grow this in a garden, in a show garden, you might want to support it because as you can see, some of the stems here are just really long, but they don't really self-support. They kind of flop all over each other.
Again, they usually grow with other flowers and they support themselves over, and they sort of bush over the other flowers and stuff. And they are very short-lived to be open. I mean, they like maybe a day and a half, and they're gone. So you'll see, like if you did a slow-mo, it would be like a wave of blue opening and closing. Again, a lot of times on a slope, and they're a dry slope, a rocky outcropping. They're very pretty.
How long do they bloom for?
Well, it depends on how much water they're getting, because what'll happen is a lot of times where they like a place where there's been late water collecting or late snow melt, or where there's water percolating down a slope underneath and it's caught by a rock or something. And then they'll bloom so long as that water is available to them. But the individual flowers don't last at all. You can't cut them, of course, they will just go. They were prized by the Native Americans here. They collected their seeds.
I would encourage everybody, when you're going to gamble and looking at these flowers, to count the number of petals. It's a 5-petal flower. and we saw the beautiful Clarkias that are 4-petal, and I believe that the California poppies are 3 petals, right? And also take advantage of feeling the petals. Has anybody in our group ever taken the time to feel a poppy, California poppy petal? I guarantee you it will be the smoothest, softest thing you've probably ever felt. It's worth doing.
Well, this next one, it was the most surprising find. I've been watching it for a while in the garden. I don't know whether it was planted intentionally.
Those are Chinese invasives. They're all through California. Sorry.
Well, this is a native Californian orchid.
All right. But we get the ones that you talk to Ella.
It's called a broadleaf helleborine, and it's also called the weed orchid. And it is growing. I see this all in my woodland walks all the time. And I'm always quite happy to find orchids, native orchids or wild orchids in California, especially in the middle of the summer. But there are probably over a dozen plants, maybe up to 20 plants, all spread throughout the garden, Gamble Garden right now. And again, it was one of these things where if you don't know what to look for, it's not that showy. It has very pretty flowers, although they don't last very long. They form these interesting seed pods. I should have gotten a better picture. Orchid seeds are about the size of dust. They produce literally tens to hundreds of thousands of seeds in one of these little seed pods, and they break open, they're dispersed by the wind. But orchids, as far as I know, all orchids will only germinate if there is a fungus in symbiosis that provides essential nutrients. So these are really interesting plants, and I think that it's kind of great to find an orchid right in the middle of Palo Alto like this. But Vicky, you have a problem with this?
Ella has us dig them up. But then this may look like the one that she has this, because I asked her when we first came, what is this? She said, oh, it's one of those Chinese orchids, dig it up. So maybe, is this one in the wildflower garden?
Yes.
It may be a species that looks like the one that I've been digging up all over the place, because the one that I've been digging up has green flowers. They're not this color.
Okay, so there are, in the Epipactis genus, there are a lot of these things. I actually vetted this slide set with the names past Ella, and she said, you got it, because there's no labels for this.
Well, that's great. I won't worry about it. I mean, goodness, I may have actually been causing destruction. Yeah. But it's interesting you say that, because if you leave leaves down, like we do under the camellia, where the camellias are and everything, the orchids come up. And it must be because there is that fungus. The mycelia are all through it. Yeah.
And my notes here say that the genus consists of about 70 different species.
Yeah.
And I had to run this past Ella because since it wasn't labeled, I had a lot of difficulty in trying to figure out which one this was. But she insists that it's helleborine, so good for her.
Well, she would know. She's very good.
Oh, Doug, question on this. It looks like the leaves show that this is a monocot. Is that right?
Absolutely. All orchids are monocots. Good for you.
Monocots. Okay. So everybody knows that the monocot has the parallel veins, as opposed to the dicot that has more of the branched vein.
Very, very observant. All right. We just have, I think, two more.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The previous one about the name. Is this related to hellebore, like the poisonous flower? No?
No.
Thank you.
That's not an orchid. The hellebore is not an orchid. I don't know what it is, but and we'll see some of those in future gardens when we do some of the woodland gardens. We have hellebores all over the place at Gamble. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's see. I don't have anything on the nomenclature here. Worth looking that up. Okay. So here's another plant that I never noticed before. Calicanthus, the California spice bush. Endemic to all of North America. And what can I tell you about this? Oh, so it's in the magnolia family, which isn't much of a surprise because look at that flower. It looks just like a magnolia flower. These, if we want to get into taxonomy a little bit, we learned about petals, we learned about sepals. When they're undifferentiated like this, they're actually called tepals, T-E-P-A-L-S, which means this plant has neither sepals or sepals or petals, but has only these tepals. The bark apparently has a strong camphor smell. I went over there this morning and I manipulated one of the leaves and I didn't smell a strong smell at all. But we'll have to do this sometime.
Where is it in the native garden, Doug? Do you remember which part? I'm looking for it.
It's very close to the driveway near the Waverly side, and it's underneath the tree.
Okay, underneath the oak tree.
Did you find it?
Isn't it, Doug?
I'm looking for it.
It's only one flower, I think.
Is it about 5 feet high? How
Yeah,
tall?
it's a bush about 5 feet high.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see it. You're right. There is just one flower. Yeah, I'll prove it.
Okay.
Do you want to tell us what it smells like?
Sure. Not much of anything, but that could just be my allergies. But there's no camphor that I detect. But you said that was the bark.
Yeah. You have to kind of scratch the bark.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yes.
Oh, really?
The bark. Yeah. But I just peeled some bark off a living plant, so that's probably not a great idea. But yeah, you can see what But it's all me. But yeah, you're right. That's the only flower on this, and it's right very close to the oak tree trunk.
The notes here say that the strongly scented flowers are produced from late spring through early autumn for Occidentalis. But yeah, I'm not sure why we only have a single flower on our plant here. These are pollinated by beetles, by the way, just like the early magnolias were, the ancient magnolias. So.
Is that a fruit?
Is
that the fruit?
I can't tell if this is flowered yet or not.
No.
I think, no, this is pre-flowering, I believe.
No, this is the flower, that red thing.
Yeah, it hasn't bloomed yet. Where here's one that has.
Okay.
It's much smaller and desiccated and brown. And there would be seeds in that, Mary or Doug?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that would be the fruit, essentially.
It looks like a little nutmeg.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as hard as. Oh, it is. It's quite hard. I can open it.
It looks like.
Actually, it's filled with sort of parachutes ready to open up. I can't really get it in focus, but they do have some sort of device to aid their being born by air at some distance. And the seeds are fairly small, but not dust size. I can't help you too much. You have to come and see it yourselves.
Does the seed pod smell? Have a camphor smell?
A little bit, not as strong as the bark. But yeah.
So these were also used as a traditional medicinal plant by Native Americans. I'm sure because of all that camphor or camphor-like substances. All right, here's our last flower. Kekiela. Another flowering shrub, kind of a funny looking plant. It was very prostrate, as I recall. It kind of just crept along the ground, and every once in a while the flower stalk would kind of come up. Not a lot of leaves. I have never seen this in the wild. It's very similar in looking to the fuchsia, so probably could be confused with that. I don't know. Is there any, Vicky, do you have anything else to say about this?
It's unknown to me. That one is not one that is it,
It's right at the base of the Calicanthus.
no, it looks like a woodland flower because the leaves are lighter green, spring green,
Right.
and it looks as if it would need shade because it looks like it would dry out pretty easily. Whereas the California fuchsia has that blue fuzzy leaf. It has the little in the lip that looks like is that a pollen organ in the top lip?
Right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it would be a hummingbird pollinator. I don't know. I will look it up.
Okay. The only notes I have here, its common name is heartleaf Kekiela, and native to the coast and coastal mountains of Southern California, resident of chaparral and coastal woodland plant communities.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It's in the shadiest part of our native garden.
Yeah, and there's another species next to it, the Kekiela antirrhinoides. And I don't know, maybe it's mislabeled because it looks very much like a sage and it doesn't have any flowers on it, but and it smells like a sage. But I can prove to you the label's right there. So,
well,
yeah. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean something again, but it is right next to the other Kekiela, which is a totally different leaf form. And of course, the flowers. So I have no idea.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. There were just a lot of flowers. I actually left out a bunch of things because I knew I was getting too many. I probably have to keep this usually to about 20 slides, and we had 25 this time. But like all the gardens, it's different every day. It's different every week, every time you go through there. Really, there were a lot of lilies that were blooming earlier, especially in the watershed garden. And I completely missed, I got a picture of like one or two of those things. And sorry, not lilies, irises. Richard just planted literally hundreds and hundreds of irises that were beautiful. And next spring, I'll try and get out there and get good pictures of them so that we can get pictures of these gardens through the different seasons. Any other questions or comments?
Just thank you very much, Doug. This was
Thank you.
Yeah, I really
Thank you.
liked it. Thanks.
Good.
A lot.
So we'll take a break for next week and resume in 2 weeks.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
Resume.
Haha.
Thank you, Doug.
Okay, bye.
Well,
Okay.
Bye.
Good to
Bye-bye.
see you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.